it's good to be back.
Yeah.
I think our stuff generally seems to track the best. I think when me and you get together, I think it's the content that people seem to enjoy. So it's good to be back, mate.
One of the biggest things that I was naturally curious about, out of all of the ones that blew up, and it was about prison, right? And a lot of people got a lot of value and lessons from prison, which makes me wonder, why do you think people in the West, they hear someone that went through prison and have all these lessons, and they're gaining some type of wisdom from it than what they're normally used to in just their regular, everyday, normie life?
I think it's different because I think a lot of people, if they go to prison or whatever, it generally destroys them. Like they go in, or they pick up an addiction, or they pick up too much like trauma or bad experience from the prison itself, because it's very negative. So it's not that common that a guy comes out of prison and goes on to become successful. It's usually kind of like a nail in the coffin for a lot of people. So yeah, I think it's a different perspective that I bring. You know, it's a perspective that I bring where I was into that sort of underworld lifestyle, but then also moved into funding and trying to make that process to more legitimate sort of income. So I think that, people generally can see the value in that. I think that, I have like a guy that I look up to, in 50 Cent. I've obviously never met him. I've been to his shows before and things like that, but I find his like progression very interesting. He started out as, it seems, like a hustler himself, you know, and he's moving to more legitimate enterprises now. Like you can see that he's more a corporate type, but he's still, I've seen some of his interviews where he said that he's had a hard time making the transition, you know, because generally what you do in your past echoes into your future. So yeah, I find maybe for the same reason that people find his content interesting and his story, maybe they find mine a little bit similar to a lesser degree. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah, when you see your story and you know, you went in, you got incarcerated, you're in the prison, and you had this ability to go ahead and decide, okay, this is who I am now for the rest of my life. I can only do things that are illegal, and I can never go ahead and become successful, or I could actually go ahead and make something for myself. Same way how other people right now, they have some type of thing. Maybe they didn't go to prison. Maybe they are going through some type of thing in life where they're just accepting it. Well, this is who I am, right? And they don't know they could actually change. How do you then reinvent yourself the moment you got out and you had no opportunity and you had this like stigma in the back of your mind of, oh, I'm a prisoner now, so maybe it's going to be hard to actually make some legitimate money in my life?
I think all of us, to a degree, are incarcerated. Like I think a lot of people are incarcerated in their belief system. You know, they have beliefs that don't really serve them. You know, maybe I was in prison and that my freedom was lost and I was in a physical prison. But I think a lot of people in general, they're a prisoner of their own sort of self-limiting beliefs. You know what it's like with your belief system. I've heard some of your experiences and how you challenged it and things like that. I think that it's very easy to just, it's like a process. You know, you like your logic develops a process for how you see yourself and how you see your future. And I think that can be quite limiting. So I think, and then also with the lockdowns and things like that have happened, I think some of us have been locked down to depending in the West, you know, to quite a large degree over the last few years. And I think that in itself, maybe that's partly why people can resonate with me to a degree. But also I think that, it's a different story, but it's an interesting one. I think that, the limiting beliefs are a big thing. For me, it was hard because I was in such a negative environment before prison. Like I was already in a veterans hospital. You know, I was in a hospital where it's just soldiers, you know, soldiers come back from the war. I spent 14 months there. So I'd already been around like people who I respect greatly, but they were very broken. Like they're fucked up. Like they've got a lot of problems from the war. And I'd already seen the government itself didn't really have like any sort of plan for people like that. Like how to deal with broken people. It's difficult though when it's a mental health thing. It's easier when it's physical. You know, if you've got a broken arm or like your shoulder's fucked, they can see what's going on. But with a lot of mental health stuff, the prescriptions and things that they give them, like pills and stuff like that, a lot of it is very theoretical. If they don't really know exactly what that sort of stuff does, it's just they try to get you towards like a healthy sort of thing. But a lot of that's just tried and tested. You know, they start putting them on medication that changes who they are to a degree. You know, like antidepressants, antipsychotics, lots of heavy medication in that place. And I would see guys coming in with problems, but then leaving kind of like zombies. So I'd already been in such a negative environment before prison. Then I went to prison straight from there, you know, so it wasn't really a big change for me. You know, I think that the hospital itself was harder than the prison.
How did you end up in that hospital?
I was in there because I got treatment for PTSD. I had a bad accident which ended my army career. I had a bad drowning. So we were doing like a helicopter underwater escape training where it's like a simulated helicopter and there's a giant pool. It's like an Olympic sized pool. And then they got like a simulated Black Hawk. It's hooked up to a crane and it sits sort of above the pool. And then they drop it into the pool and you're like strapped in, sitting in it. And there's like, 5 or 6 other guys. And you're meant to like wait till it gets to the bottom of the pool and then it rolls a few times and then you find your way out. But you're in all your full uniform, boots, and you've got everything on. So it's quite clunky. Like you're taking up a lot of space down there. So it's not as easy to get out as it would seem. And of course that would normally be fine. But the person next to me, we got to the bottom of the pool. The person next to me had missed their breath. So you're meant to take a massive breath as it like sort of hits the water because it sinks slowly. Obviously it simulates a crash. It doesn't just go straight down into the ocean. It hits the water and then fills up with water and then sinks. But the person next to me had missed their breath. So they jumped out like halfway through, like they'd climbed out of the machine, like taking their seatbelt off and flown out. And I didn't know that their seatbelt had like wrapped around my head until I got to the bottom of the pool. And then we got to the bottom of the pool. I start looking up, like I see everyone's getting out. So I'm like, all right, time to get out myself. And then, I went to take the seatbelt off. I was stuck like in the machine. I realized their seatbelt was around my head, but also my seatbelts itself had like wrapped me up. So I couldn't move. And then, the machine rolls, like it continually rolls until it eventually stops. So it simulates like going down like a helicopter. If it loses like its rotors, it starts to roll. That's the shape of the fucking aircraft, like in the ocean. So I was stuck in the bottom of the pool. We had a diver. He didn't have the knife to get me out. So I got stuck there for a very long time. And then, when they finally lifted the machine up, I was like passed out. And that was pretty much essentially the end of my army career, like in that one specific moment. And then I had PTSD after that, but I sort of just hid from it, like I wasn't really like facing it. I essentially just, ran from it. I ran into like gambling, eventually would run into taking drugs. And I think with PTSD, like I've spent fucking years around hundreds or probably thousands of soldiers with PTSD. I think that you create chaos because it's like, it's a distraction, but it's also like what's going on in your own mind. I think that's when I started to realize like what you think becomes your life. Like people don't really understand that. Like if you have chaos going on in your head, you're going to create chaos like in your actual life. But it took a long time to sort of get it over that. For me, I don't like, do any sort of really reckless behavior anymore, but I used to. It took me a while to reel that in. But the PTSD itself for me, it's just, it's chaotic. It's like it's always there. It's not like a boogeyman, sitting there waiting to attack you, but it changes who you are. Like it changes your brain over time. And then I think that a lot of those changes become permanent. So that was, and then when I went to prison, all that, I was already in the chaotic life, so it wasn't really a big change for me. But since then, I tried to sort of like, be a bit more like relaxed. That's a big thing for me. And I think it's a big thing for a lot of people. A lot of people like in the West too, they start these real like fuckboy relationships and things like that. And I've done that. I've done that for the distraction, for the chaos. It's toxic. It's a bit of like a laugh and things like that, but it doesn't really get you anywhere. And it's very time consuming. Like you're fighting with a girl and she's like sending you walls of text and shit and you have to reply and like that. It takes away from like, if you know yourself, like you're running your business and things like that, you can't have like a chaotic, even like friend or woman, like trying to, because it alters like your progression. Even if it takes like an hour out of your day, that's a long time. And you're an hour into that negative sort of mindset, so it takes longer to get out of it. It's not like you can just be negative for an hour and then suddenly like just reel it in and you're fully like, optimized and progressing your business. It does knock you out for a while. So I find that sort of thinking and lifestyle in the West, I think that's a bigger thing there, is very distracting. And that takes away a lot. Like if you pulled a man, like the average man, he would be wasting a lot of time like chasing pussy, but also like, in little like drama fights and things like that. And being toxic, it's fun and, it's funny and the sex can be good, but it doesn't really get you ahead.
One thing that you said is PTSD, and I've never had PTSD, right? So I'm assuming a lot of people that also are watching this and listening probably have never even experienced this, so they maybe could understand what it would be like, but walk them through what was it like when you developed the PTSD? What was the thoughts that were going on in your brain? What was the feelings that you felt at any given moment? Because you said something very interesting. The thoughts in your mind create like the reality that you have. So I'm curious, what was that like to have those thoughts, and then how did that affect your life and your reality?
For me, when I realized I had PTSD, I realized I had changed, like something had changed. I had a girlfriend that I was up in Townsville. So I was in the army up in Townsville. It's just a state of Queensland. It's not a big state. It's predominantly like a mining country sort of city, but there's also a considerable army presence there. So I was up there. I had my girlfriend at the time. We'd been together maybe 2 years. She'd moved up there with me from Wagga Wagga, which is just a tiny city, an army town again. And she was, yeah, a good girl. But for me, everything really changed after that. I'm not saying that I was like some fucking good boy before the accident, because I wasn't. I just became more extreme of who I was. But yeah, I was already gambling. I was already like, like talking to multiple girls at once, with a girlfriend. I was already doing all that shit. But that just got more extreme after the accident. I remember after I had my accident, as soon as it happened, I remember I'd like gotten up and I was like, oh, I'm going to go to the shower and like shower and like have a shower or whatever. And they had showers in the facility. And I went up there, and then like by the time I left, like 3 hours had gone by. And it felt like I was in there for like 3 minutes. Everyone had gone home. Like the facility itself was empty. And then the same thing carried on when I got home. I remember I got home, I'd had the accident, whatever. I told like my girlfriend at the time. She didn't know that it was very serious, because I didn't know at the time. I was like, yeah, that's, I'm just really tired, but it's okay. And then I slept, and I remember I slept, and it was for like almost 3 days. Like I think 3 days I slept like 14 or 16 hours a day. And then when I woke up, I just felt like in a trance. Like from then on, like it lasted for like weeks or like even months. Like where I was like disconnected from my body. I almost felt like, yeah, like my mind and my body were completely different. I couldn't like feel anything. And then I started to do more extreme things to like feel things. Like gambling increased, my drinking increased, fighting increased, like getting into fights out in the city. The drama around work like increased. I was getting into trouble at work, all that sort of crap. I was like fucking more girls, like cheating nonstop. Just everything just accelerated, the stuff that I was already doing, but I started to do it to an extreme. And then, yeah, so PTSD for me, it became extreme behavior, but the paranoia started, and it became like extreme paranoia. I had this like, I remember it started probably like a month after the accident. I had this like just idea at night that someone was going to break into the house, and we were in an apartment block, so it was very unlikely that someone would just come in. But I remember I started like setting up traps by the door and things like that. And this is in an apartment block. Like I was very aware that someone to break in, it's very unlikely. But I'd set like things up so that if they even turned the like door, I would be alerted and things like that. And it's that no one had ever tried to break in, so it was a completely like irrational idea. But those sort of ideas like that started to like overwhelm me, where I'd like sleep with like knives and things like that, like as though someone was coming to get me, but they weren't. Like I didn't have any enemies or anything at the time. And then my girlfriend too, like she started to see a lot of that behavior, and she was like, this is like fucking like scary. This is unacceptable. What I learned about women then, and that's lasted me a long time with a guy like me, women like to be pretend scared. They like to be around, like they like the monster that they realize that it's pretend. Like they like to see the movie, but it's as soon as the movie turns off, it's scary, but then you turn the movie off and it's like you're back to reality. They don't want a guy that's like scary nonstop. They don't like that. They just like that. It's like the scary roller coaster, and once you go over the loop, it's like smooth sailing again. You know that it's like still safe. But when you're with someone who's like quite reckless, they don't like that all the time. Even your most like toxic girl, she's not going to like that all the time. So for me, it was that realization that a lot of that stuff had changed, and I just ignored it, because then when I got out of the army, I eventually got discharged, had like a suicide attempt when I got out, didn't die. Fucking woke up in hospital, and that was like a massive low point. Girlfriend left, like not long after that. We'd been together for years. But that was my own fault, I certainly don't blame her for leaving. It was like a sinking ship if she had stayed there for many years. Like it took me a long time. Like people look at and see the end result, like, yeah, I'm wealthy, I do whatever the fuck I want. I can essentially do like pretty much anything. But the progress to get to that, like it was a lot of lows. Like I don't think anyone could have stuck around. Like even my friends from back then, I don't really talk to, because I've had a lot of low points. I was gambling nonstop. I was doing a lot of drugs. I was selling a lot of drugs. I was very violent, so and that sort of lifestyle when you're around criminals, because obviously I progressed to the drug dealing. It's very transient, like people are in and out of jail. They've got like low ethics, like low morals, so they're fucking each other over. But it's very exciting, like me and my friend would be doing shit together, like obviously like selling and doing that sort of work. And the lifestyle, it's very exciting. Like, the work doesn't really start till like 10 at night. And then you're up till like 4 or 5 in the morning. So you really, like the hours that you're sleeping, they're very like, they're not normie friendly. Like you can go your whole days without really having much to do with normies because you know all the stuff happens at night, like in the city especially when it's around drugs and things like that. Most of the stuff's done at night time. So yeah, you do get like a disproportional reality where you're only around like that sort of nightlife and like criminal behavior and things like that. So you kind of that's the thing with like drugs or like things like that. Your reality starts to like get morphed. Like you know you're not around normal people much anymore. So the only people you're around are like doing that extreme behavior as well. So your behavior gets even more extreme because you don't really even have like a compass of someone who's doing the right thing. Like everyone's doing the wrong thing. So it's easy to get like really fucking like down that rabbit hole, like go down that path a lot. And it wasn't until probably I had a friend of mine. He wasn't like, you know, a best friend or anything like that, more like a business associate. But beyond that, I would still say like, you know, that I cared about him, whatever. And he was murdered. Like he got murdered I don't know, maybe like 6 months or something before I went to prison. And that was like a point for me where I'm like, because I was getting investigated, like we had like our own little group was getting investigated for the murder, even though it was our own like fucking business associate friend. And then I realized like shit's getting very serious. It wasn't just the fear of dying. I knew that like I was getting like fucking locked up for a very long time at some point. So to a degree, I'm happy that it eventually fell over the way it did, because I would have just kept going. And then when I eventually got caught later down the line, it would have been for something massive. You know, how I got caught, it wasn't really like, I didn't get caught like doing the action. My fucking ex at the time like snitched on me. She went to the police. She found out that I was like fucking a lot of other girls and doing a lot of shit wrong like that. And then one day she's just like, fuck this guy, I'm gonna fucking like get him locked up. So I wasn't like a perfect guy, you know. And then, yeah, she did fuck me over like that. But it's almost a good thing that it happened. Like how I got caught, it was never with drugs, fucking money, any of that shit. It was just on a few like words of a few people. So the case itself was quite weak. But I, of course, like got started at trafficking, charged with that, and then took like, you know, an offer where they're like, oh, you have to accept like 6 other little charges that they're still big, but they're not as big. And then we'll like drop the trafficking because we don't want to take it to court because my ex was a witness and she wasn't like a very good witness. Exes, when they're in that sort of lifestyle, they're not very credible. You know, like they've got a motive to fuck you over when she's like, it finds out that you were cheating on her and shit like that. So when your barrister or whatever like cross-examines them, their case can fall apart because she has a motive to fuck you. You know, she's as deep involved in it as you are, like her integrity is in question. So yeah, if I'd have taken it to court, maybe I could have had a better outcome, but I did take it all the way to trial in Supreme Court, which means that, you know, 25 years is on the line. You know, there's no limit for how much time they can give you. But then like, I don't know, maybe like a month before the court date or whatever, I took a fucking offer where they're like, if you just, we'll drop the trafficking, but you have to plead guilty to all this other crap. And then I just said, all right, well, if you drop the trafficking, I'll plead to other shit. Because in Australia, what happens is you're only fucked for your biggest charge. Like if you're on for drug trafficking, but then you're up for like something like fucking, I don't know, like an arson or some like bashing people, that shit doesn't matter anymore. It's just the biggest charge because they all will run together. You know, cumulative sentences where they run like one after another, that's very rare. You know, it's only under certain circumstances. It wasn't like that for me. So I knew that that was just the best strategic outcome. I had a barrister, I had a lawyer as well. And they gave me great advice. You know, a big part of why I sort of got the outcome that I got, I had fucking like good legal teams but I didn't like keep fucking up. Like once you're caught, that's the thing. Like guys get caught and they'll be in the back of the squad car and then they'll be like kicking out the window and shit like that. Like it's all over. Like there's no point fucking like making it much worse. All you can do once you're caught, or like they theoretically have you like in shit, is say nothing and just like let your lawyer like sort it out from there. You don't need to like make it 10 times worse. You know, I went to the army hospital, so I got treatment there for PTSD. I completed that like program. So when I went to court, they're like, he's actually been doing shit. Like it's hard to say that he's not like getting fucking treatment. So, because I was originally bailed, but I had to stay at the hospital, like that army hospital. It's called the Keith Payne Unit. It's in Greenslopes, Queensland. It's just predominantly for army. You know, it's quite a big little unit in the hospital there. So it's a good, you know, it's a very good fucking thing that they do. You know, I'm not bashing the place. They don't have like, you know, much of a thing for people with mental health problems. There's not really like a lot they can do. Like if I had to optimize it, I don't even know like if I could make it better than it is. Because when people have mental health problems, it's very hard to fucking fix it. A lot of with PTSD too, it starts out with one issue, but then it becomes like it's like a monster. Like there's a lot of other problems, like their relationships falling over. They're like, can't see their kids. They get like violent. So it's a lot of social issues that you can't like really solve. So I do understand that they have a very hard job there, and they do a good job. I know that that hospital would be like, you know, like responsible for hundreds of people still being alive from the treatments that they do. So I know that it's a good thing that they do there, and it's a good thing that the defence in Australia itself like covers it. You know, they generally pay. Like if you've got accepted conditions, they do shit. You know, I don't think DVA in Australia is perfect, but it is quite good. Like compared to a lot of the other countries where like, imagine in Russia, like you get your arm blown off in this war in Ukraine, and like, so what? That shit doesn't matter. You know, there's fuck all waiting for you. So I think that yeah, their system, it's not perfect, but it's quite good. You know, they try to help.
Yeah, no, like the thing that you said on, you know, PTSD, paranoia, all of these things, how it starts in the mind and then it starts affecting your relationships. It's like, and it's hard to get out of that, especially what you went through. I didn't even know all of like that past. It was like pretty new to me. But now, like I see you, right? And it seems like your relationships are really healthy with the people around you. You are impeccable with your word. Whenever it comes to like loyalty with the people that are good to you, you have nothing but also loyalty back to them. So how did you overcome that? Like, how did you go from really bad relationships where it seemed like it was hard to trust people because, you know, people closest to you would snitch on you, right? To now where it seems like the relationships that you have with the people that we spend time with men and women seem way better than all the stories that you're telling me in the past.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of it was just, yeah, being around better people. I think drugs changes people. Like if you're around people, you're selling drugs, but they're taking drugs as well, they get like a low ethics, you know, like low morals in general. They become like corrupted people. You know, if someone values a thing before another thing, like drugs or something becomes like their biggest thing, then it's very hard to get them to keep their word because they're going to break it time and time again. So for me, it was dropping that. It was dropping a lot of the fuckboy stuff. Like I had girls around that was like toxic. So then the friends that were around, it's not very good. Like, you know, if you're out at a club or something and they're seeing you like fight with girls and stuff like that, they don't really want to stick around. Like even your friends, it becomes a lot of drama and it rubs off. So I dropped a lot of that stuff, you know. I dropped a lot of that, like trying to have like fucking 6 girls and shit like that. And it made a lot of stuff easier because I could focus more on things that mattered, like the friendships and relationships that I actually want to like water. You know, I could do that instead of having like, you know, you've only got like 100% and you're just trying to like drip it out into like, you know, 20 people or something, or refine it down to a group of people where like you invest in that equity and it's actually like worth doing, instead of like investing in debt equity, you know, where you like invest your time in a girl, but you know that it's not really going to go anywhere and you don't really give a shit or whatever. And then when she leaves, it's like all that takes all that equity with you that you built up. So I prefer to try and build up people that are worth it. And I know that they're going to stick around, you know, like friends or something that have potential. And I do get built up, you know, from the circle that we have. You know, I'm always a fucking student. You know, the groups that we're around, I know that each person has something to teach. You know, there are some things that I'm like an expert in, and there's certainly things that you guys are experts in that I don't fucking know a lot about, you know. So it's always good to be around people that challenge you. I think that that's a very important thing, to be like a lifelong student. I think a lot of people have just a massive ego and they're like insecure. So the concept of like, you know, becoming less and admitting that there are people around them that are better than them at certain things, it's difficult for them to do. Like if I'm around a guy who's a master with women, I don't like compete with him and be like, I can get better girls than you, or I can do this, or I can do that. Because it's like, it just a low self-awareness, you know. And then if I'm around someone who, you know, like yourself, like a social media expert and like a marketing expert and like, you know, someone who's great at sales, I don't sit there and like, get it. If you say, oh, you should do this for your Instagram or something, I don't get into a debate with you because I know you know what you're talking about. You know, I just try to learn from experts that are experts in their field that actually have results in that field. And instead of like, you know, it's a lot less like stress because you don't have to posture, you know, like you don't have to like put such a bullshit front up. You can just absorb the good. And I'm not saying everything that I give out or something. Like I can tell someone something and 90% of what I say, they're like, I'm not going to do any of that. But the 10% that resonates with them, they're like, oh, I can actually implement that, you know. And it's the way that I think that it works. You know, the groups that we're around, like the guys, I think that everyone's an expert in one thing, and if you can take on like, you know, just a piece of that person. I'm a guy that copies guys. You know, I always have been. You know, since school, I'm not the guy that, you know, I'm not this, just was like this out of the womb. You know, I'm just a product of copying like the greats. You know, I never like reinvented the wheel. I've just been around people where parts of who they are and parts of what they do has resonated with me and it's rubbed off. and it's like a tapestry on the wall, like a big fucking like massive piece of art. And it's taken like, you know, such a long time to get to that point, but each person's hung like a small thing that I've got on there, and then the final result's here, but you know, it's not the absolute end. And then it's like that with a positive and also a negative thing. But a lot of guys get like the negativity, you know, it's like a tapestry, but like people come and just spit on it, you know, like they're in relationships with women that degrade them, relationships with friends where they like let so much go that like they feel bad and don't really want to hang out with them. Their boss, like, you know, they can't like signal to their boss that they want more responsibility or leadership so they can get paid more. Think that, yeah, even their parents, like a lot of guys in the West, they're kind of like daddy's boy, like a mummy's boy still. So their parents are kind of like, you know, respectfully, you know, they don't mean to, but they're still like holding them back. Because eventually, like these guys, they need to be like the dad. Like they're going to have sons of their own. You can't like, you know, continually take advice from your dad. You can take like, you know, the advice as someone who's like, you know, still gives it every now and then, almost like a passive advice, or lives the way that you want to live. But you can't like, you know, call your dad every time you're having an issue. Because then eventually, like, you're going to have a son, and like, what are you going to do? Like, when he comes to you, you're going to call your dad. Like, he's not going to be here forever. Like, you've eventually got to like figure it out yourself. So part of that is, yeah, part of it always is going to be like, when you have a son, like you have to live what you want him to live. Then you don't really have to tell him everything. He just looks and he's like, this is what my dad does, so this is what I do. But a lot of the stuff like the guys see, like the kids, it's the negativity, like the negative stuff. Like they're in a crappy household, their dad's like in fear all the time. Like he's worried that he's going to lose his job. He's worried that he's like, you know, can make payments of things. Like he's living in a massive scarcity. He tells his kid he can't buy a toy that's like $12 this week and things like that. That's really dangerous. Like, that's a dangerous thing to say to kids. I understand it if you're living in like a place where the wage is shit. Like, you know, maybe they're living in like, I don't know, like Vietnam or something where the average pay like sucks. So the concept of buying like $12 things is expensive. But if they're in the West and like you create that massive scarcity in your kids, it's very hard to override. You know, with my parents, like they're great parents and I fucking love them entirely, but we always, like not always, but we had money issues, you know, growing up and things like that. So a lot of that like stuck with me for a very long time, that money, you have to hold it, like protect it. Even if you have fucking like $100 bill, you have to like clutch it so hard so it doesn't go anywhere. You know, and it's very hard because obviously you have to invest money to make money. So it's very hard to get over that scarcity. And it becomes not just scarcity with money, but with all things. You know, you're generally afraid. Like I remember growing up, there was a massive amount of fear in my house. Like my dad was very sick. Like he had a heart problem from when I was maybe like 12 years old from then on. You know, so he was always like not working. We were moving constantly. So he didn't really like, we didn't really have a lot of money from that point onwards. So there was always like fear in the air about losing the house and things like that. And that's very hard to overcome. You know, it's hard to overwrite that sort of like scarcity behavior. It either pushes someone into an idea where they have to save like every single like penny that they get, or it pushes them into like just a very fearful mindset where they can't trust their own decisions. And the only way to get rich is to invest. You know, you can't just get rich like hoarding cash, you know, with inflation the way it is and things like that. You have to take risks. The average guy now, he doesn't understand how much risk he has to take to get rich. Like, you know, if you're a young dude coming up now, you have to take risks. The days of like just sitting around and, you know, taking in massive amounts of money and like, oh, you can buy a house, you know, you can get loans and buy houses and then the house is going to triple in 10 years time and things like that. Those days are predominantly done. You know, you have to take more risk now. You have to invest in like, you know, speculative tech, like tech sector itself, crypto. If you don't have a lot of money, you have to take more risks to like multiply it. It's not the days of like the guy who just wants passive income. That's kind of bullshit now, unless you have a lot of money. Like passive income and that's bullshit unless you're like, you know, worth like 5 million or more. Because then the passive income coming in actually matters. But if you're on like crappy money, like most guys are going to be on like 40K a year or less. And then the idea that they're like, even if they're investing like 10% of it or 20% of it, like what they need to multiply that. They don't need to worry about passive income. Because even if they're like 70 years old, they still, with inflation the way it is, they'll still be fucked. Like you have to focus on the multiples. Multiples are the biggest thing that matters. You know, it's not about the days of like getting passive income comes at the end. Like guys like us can sit around and talk about passive income because we have money. But the guy who doesn't really have it yet, he needs to focus on multiplying it. And that means taking considerable risk. It doesn't mean like, you know, taking risk where you buy like NFTs and garbage with all your money. Maybe you invest like you put like 2% aside for really, really speculative plays. But he needs to take, like an element of risk, like a controlled risk. You invest in crypto like Bitcoin, Ethereum, time will historically bail you out. The guy who even buys it like Ethereum at 4K, if he's happy to hold for like another 3 or 4 years, historically he's been bailed out every time. He probably will get bailed out again. So yeah, generally speculative fucking instruments are going to work well, but the right things, guys will just go and load up on like some like shit coin and put their whole like net worth in, and then it crashes and then they're fucked. I don't believe in that. But yeah, it's like the risky plays, but still like the blue chips, as blue chip as it gets in crypto, like Ethereum and Bitcoin. I think that they're as solid as can be in that sort of field. And I think that, yeah, a guy probably needs to have like 10 or 15% of his net worth in there. And he needs to focus out for like the 3 or 4 year time. He needs to take more risks. But then guys don't realize how little they have to lose. Because even if they blow it up, so many guys don't really have like a retirement anyway. They have a retirement in their mind, but once it eventually comes, they'll realize it's bullshit. Like inflation, the way it is, the dollar will be essentially crushed. Like they'll still have their 401k or like their super in Australia and things like that. But what they have to buy, like that won't even buy a house. Like, the guys are retired now on their super, and you can't even buy like a house in like the slums for that sort of money. But like 20 years ago, you could. So the dollar itself, they're like getting their, return like 5% a year or whatever. But inflation's like probably like 10% plus, on assets. So they're still getting fucked. The shit that matters, like buying like Microsoft stock or like Apple stock or houses or things like that, the shit that's actually like equity, you can only buy less and less of it over time. So hoarding cash, it doesn't matter like how much you get in 50 years time if you have like $5 million, if like an average house costs that. It's just, yeah, the digits don't matter. It's just like how it compares to things that do matter. If a loaf of bread's like $20 or $30 for one, it's like pretty irrelevant how much cash you have. You need to like price it against the things that matter. Not just like guys get excited. Like if I gave like a guy $1 million today, he'd sit there and like fucking dance nonstop, but then like 2 or 3 years from now, most guys will have fucked it up. If you don't have the money coming in, you don't know how to invest. It's not really that easy. Not that easy to be rich.
When you said something very interesting, it's like you were who you were, and then who you are is kind of like a tapestry of you copying the people around you, right? And when people see you, right, they see you, successful, traveling, doing all these cool things, but they don't know that moment in your life where you actually had, like for example, a suicide attempt, like what you said, right? So if someone's going ahead and listening to this and watching, and they're like in a tough spot, maybe not to the point where you were, but they don't believe that they could actually get out of it, right? If you're able to go ahead and get out of your situation and live the life that you live right now, I want to really know, and this is probably the big question a lot of people also have when they're in that worst situation, right after that first suicide attempt that you said you had that failed, and then you woke up, right? What was going on through your mind, and how did you overcome that to actually start getting the motivation to fix your life up?
Yeah, I realized that like as soon as I woke up, I was pretty surprised. Like I was very fucking dazed. I had overdosed on this Valium, but also Xanax and alcohol. So the Xanax itself, the Valium, if you're overdosing like Valium, it's like diazepam, it's quite safe. Like it's very unlikely that you die. But if you do combine it with Xanax, it can be very dangerous because the Xanax itself is like, it's a lot stronger. You might not wake up from that. And then with alcohol on top. But I think the issue was I woke up because I took like the diazepam first and then took the Xanax. And like by the time I went to drink, I was pretty much passing out. Like it hits fast, when you take a considerable amount. So yeah, the thing that happened to me when I woke up was like, I realized at first surprise, but then I realized like, it's just me. Like you can't hate yourself. Like, you can't like fucking, I realized that day when I woke up, and I'd had that feeling once before when I woke up. I woke up with like a smashed face, like I got knocked out, but I had to get surgery on my face. I realized that then the same thing as I realized in hospital then, you can't hate yourself, but it is only you. Like your hardest battles in the world, it's going to be fought on your own. Like, when you're in hospital, if you've got cancer or like some serious disease, you can have all the people around you that love you and they're standing there, but it's up to you. Like, no one's taking those like very like daunting fucking trips with you. Like those, like where you're at rock bottom. It doesn't matter who's around you. Like you can have the best support system around you in the world, but ultimately it's like up to you if you choose to get up or not. It's like boxing. If you get knocked down, like you can have everyone around you cheering you on, like telling you, get up, and you're so loved and supported. But that doesn't matter because you can still stay down. Like you might just decide like I've had enough or whatever. But you have to like realize that your life itself is worth fighting for. It's like, Yeah, I realized you can't hate yourself, that you have to be your own friend. And I realized it then, but of course it took me many years to get to that sort of fucking like conclusion. But it generally started for me was just moving more towards like a healthy life. Like I know you live like very healthy with your diet and things like that. I never used to. I used to be like a big dude, but I used to eat like a lot of fucking shit and eat a lot of food. So I was always like, maybe 220 pounds or something, but I was massive, but still had like a stomach, but I could still be strong and shit. So I was still happy with that. But I started, eventually was on the drugs, but drinking, gambling. But when I dropped all that down, so a lot of guys, they're at rock bottom, but they have to just take it like, build that foundation, like I say. That was part of it for me. I realize like now that you can't really hit rock bottom for someone like me because I have the foundation. I know what I need to do, but even if I like fall fucking all the way back to the bottom, I have like a base there. I can't fall any further than that. I have the fuck you money obviously sitting in the bank account, but even if I lost all that, I'd still be me to a point. I would lose like, the fake people around me, like, the girls and shit who only want to hang out because they like want to sit in a nice car and all that shit, that'd disappear. But there'd still be like, I still have value to provide. The people around me that like me, I think that they would still be around. Even if I was like, on 60K a year or something like that and blew my whole fucking like finances up. But, which I have almost done in the 2018 bear market, for crypto, I lost millions during that period, which was getting to a point where I'm like, fuck, like, I'm only like a low millionaire, but like it was still like a big hit, I'd lost like millions of dollars. So I was like, fuck, I'm fucked here. Like I might be going back to like, some normality. But even that, like in itself, I wasn't really that afraid. Like I've had all the time, working at Hungry Jack's, working at like fucking Burger King, McDonald's. My parents never had a lot of money. My dad drives buses still. My mum's not working. She's older. But I've had, like, I'm not from money. I'd never really been around anyone that had money. So I know how to like get a lot out of life with nothing. Like I'd still have girls when I'd like have a mattress on the floor. Like I was sleeping in a fucking like shared house. I just had hired a room and I was sleeping on the floor, like out of the army, and I still had girls. I still had like, friends that were around. I still like, was still me. I just had no money. I couldn't flex like nice shit. But the nice stuff, like it's just accessories. It's easy to say like, I still wear it and things like that. So people would be like, oh, he's just saying it because he has it. But it is just an accessory. It's not like the whole fucking product. It's nice to have nice things. It's nice to wear nice things. It's nice to, it's comfortable to look good and things like that. But it's not like, the whole person themselves. Just because someone has like a Richard Mille or something like that, that doesn't change who they are. And just because someone doesn't have nice shit doesn't mean that they're, like a lesser person. They're just accessories. Someone can be in a Lamborghini and the other guy can be in like a Toyota Corolla. But the guy in the Lamborghini's like pretty unhappy, and the guy in the Toyota Corolla is there with like his wife and kids, and he's quite happy with his life. But the guy in the Lamborghini works like 16 hours a day and hasn't really figured out how to have like a wife in that situation, or has one and she's only with him to like drain all his money. And he knows, like, he sits in the back of his mind and he's like, fuck, if I lose this job, like my wife's gone. Like it's different for me. A lot of guys are. I've met many that live like that, to think that if they lost their Lamborghini, they would lose who they are. Like they'd lose pretty much everyone that's around them. The girls that they're with only want to hang out with them to get like the selfie with the Lamborghini sticker in the fucking board. Like on the back, she photos and gets the Lamborghini seat on the back. That's predominantly what people are with those sort of people for. And, if you have nice things, you have to be careful because the people that are around you can only like your stuff, and stuff can go. Things come and go. It's not who you are. So in some ways, having nice things and things like that, it can be problematic because you don't really see exactly what people want. When you have nothing and people still want to hang out with you, you know that they really like you. But when you're like, like I said, running around in like a Rolls Royce or something, a lot of people want to hang out with that person, but it's not for the right reasons. So that guy can be in a state of dread himself and fear because he's like, if I lose this, like I lose a large part of who I am. And you see it with these crypto guys. Like you see why a lot of these projects like do rug pulls and shit during the bear markets. I've worked in funding. I've seen many of them. I've sat down with many of these guys. The crypto guys in general have a massive fear of losing their money because it's all they have. So when like the bear markets and shit happen, they exit scam. They take like the millions of dollars out of the project and scam and like run and things like that. Because if they lose their money, they have nothing else. Like they have the sugar babies and the nice cars and shit like that. They can't go back to being a nobody. So they will scam everyone around them. It's just how they are. they can't lose. Like if they lose that, they lose everything that they go back to mummy's basement. So that's why a lot of people in that specific field do scam. Finance guys in general are quite like that as well. They have like low morals in that regard because they're easy to push. That's why a lot of them do snitch, like Wolf of Wall Street. They're quite spineless people. They can't imagine losing that sort of money. That's all they have. That guy in general, I would say that he's very educated when he talks in sales and things like that. So I do respect him in that regard, but I don't find him a respectable person because he snitched on people. It's one thing if they snitch on someone, but you don't snitch on your friends. You can't buy your soul back. Like if you do shit like that, it stains you forever. Just because people pat you on the shoulder because you have heaps of followers and they can get clout from you and shit like that, that doesn't mean that you're a respectable person. And that's what I don't like, the influencer game. People will pretend and sit down with someone that has no dignity, and then they'll pretend that it's all fucking, that they respect them and things like that just to get on the platform. That's very fake. If someone tells me they got 10 million subs and I don't like who they are, but they want to sit down and have a chat, I still wouldn't talk to them because what's the point? It destroys your own credibility because you have to be in the bullshit now. You have to sit down with someone that you don't really agree with and pretend you agree with them. But then if you sit down with them and just disagree, it's not really it's pretty pointless because you can't change what they've done. I wouldn't get on there and have a big debate with him because he's already done what he's done. It doesn't matter. Not to say he doesn't have value, like the Wolf of Wall Street guy. He obviously has considerable value. He's an expert in his field. I don't have to like every part of him to say that he's still obviously respectable in that field, but structurally he's done things obviously that you can't come back from.
One thing that you said many times in our conversation already is with an ex, right? So for example, a lot of people that have success, some of the times the most difficult challenges when you have success is your relationships with for example, your partner or a woman, right? So I'm really curious from that relationship, from your ex that snitched on you, what was the biggest lesson you learned about relationships and the women that you bring into your life?
I learned the power of a woman, what women can really fucking destroy your life. And the worst thing is they can destroy you because they get together. Guys don't realize that. Guys think that they fuck one over and then they fuck two over. And it's you've set off little spot fires. You've got a spot fire burning out in this city and now you've got another fire burning out in another city. They can combine. And then they start talking to each other and comparing notes and things like that. And it turns into a bushfire. They combine forces and they can fucking start to influence your life. You're running a business or something like that and they can start making up stories or even telling the truth. If, you're fucking other girls or whatever and they find out. And when they get together, they can compare stories and notes. So if you are fucking multiple girls, it's like a puzzle. And the more of them get together, they can start to figure out exactly what you're doing. And it's not just that. They gain credibility because then it's not just one ex talking shit about you, it's multiple exes. And if they do combine and go to the police, they can make things difficult for you, even if it's a bullshit story. So yeah, I learned that women in general, they have a lot of power and they're also very fucking intuitive. They can figure things out that. I don't know, FBI true crime. If they get together, they can brainstorm and figure a lot of shit out. So that's sort of generally where I realized I don't lie to girls and fuck multiple girls and cheat and shit like that. And that was a big eye-opening moment. I was doing all that until that moment happened. And then I realized that they have a lot of power, women in general. They don't have the physical power, obviously they're not physically strong, but they have the influence, and especially if they're hot. I learnt that this girl, she's the girl that fucking fucked me over. She's hot. She's got massive tits, but she's hot as well. She was hot at the time. I learnt that hot women, they can do a lot more damage because when they start talking to men, they can really recruit men. She recruited a lot of the police to pretty much do her bidding. She got in the police station. I mean, she's the hottest girl that's probably ever goes there. I mean, they see women with no teeth and shit in there all the time. Crackheads nonstop. So when she goes in, guys can simp. A lot of the police are kind of simps in that sort of field. So I learnt that there's a lot of blue-pilled simps in that field, and she would go in and they'd take all her statement and shit like that, but they want to talk to her longer so she can they give them her number and shit, and then they're she's oh, I'm having problems with this, and they I'll sort this guy out, and they actually can do that. I've had that happen to me twice. I had that happen once before with another ex when I was still in the army. She got my warrant officer's number. That's my fucking boss's boss. She got his number, and then she would call him and fucking bitch about me, and he would start fucking me over in real time. I learnt then that hot women particularly, they can fucking influence your world a lot because they can recruit guys essentially to simp for them, but guys with power over you, and they can punish you. You know, so you have to fucking like be careful. Like if it's some like fat chick, like very little guys are gonna help her, but the hotter she gets, like the more influence she can, the more ways she can fuck you over. So yeah, I learnt that, and then I it was a great lesson to learn at that age. You know, if I had have kept doing it now, I think that it would have fucked my business over. You know, so I do think that it was a very powerful lesson to learn. It depends though. Like if you want to be some fucking like loser, like sleeping on a couch or whatever, and like a fucking no hoper, like women probably won't really fuck you over because there's nothing in it. Like, but if you want to be like a broke boy, like even if you the concept like chicks don't really take the guy serious, you know. So even if they fuck him or whatever, it's just nothing in it to like me to him or something like that. Like he has no money or anything, nothing in it to like put a false complaint in or like try to damage his work or whatever because he doesn't really have like decent work. So if that's the goal, like you can probably get away with a lot of that crap because it's like you're too small to bother to like kick over. Like it's pointless. But if you want to be someone, that shit comes back to haunt you. Like if you've got a lot of pissed off exes like looming around in the distance and you become successful in like a few years after that, they can still fuck you over. Yeah, they can still make things difficult. If you want to build a platform online, they can still fucking like start bitching about you or like airing out your dirty laundry at a later date. And if there's a few of them, it becomes more credible. You know, if one ex or whatever's like saying shit, it's like people will be like, oh yeah, whatever. But if a few start like putting photos of you two up together and bitching about you and they're all saying the same thing and you're like build an audience of like 1 million subs, that can start to cause damage to you now, like in real time. You have to respond. And then you've now like fed them. So now they'll fucking like start, it all begins again. It starts as though like time hadn't really stopped. You know, so you have to be careful with that. It's a very like, it's not the world that it used to be. You know, in my old days, like we had like the dating apps, whatever. They weren't apps, they were like dating sites and like fucking girls that you talk to, whatever. And the girls were completely different. They didn't have like the massive network that they have now. Like girls can figure out now who you're fucking. Like they just check your follower list. Girls can like have an idea of your type. Like girls can check a guy's follower list and like kind of like deconstruct and imagine who he's talking to and who he's fucking. It's not that difficult. You know, it's if I'm like looking at a girl and I want to like think about taking her serious and I like check her followers and see she's just following heaps amount of guys, like I would never take her serious. If I was followed a girl like on Instagram, whatever, and she's like following even like half guys, I would never like think that she's very serious. I would just think that she's like a bit of a fucking like thought. So I know that, yeah, when women see the same thing, they think the same thing. A lot of guys think that it's like attractive to, you know, guys to just like being fuckboys, but it only attracts a specific type of woman. A lot of the women that guys would want to retain aren't really attracted to that. Like they're not attracted to the guy who's got like 3 fucking Pateks on and like, you know, the massive chain and things like that. That's the short term stuff. A lot of women would be turned off by that because they think the guy's put a massive amount of stuff next to him to overcome a heap of shortfalls that he's got. And that's generally like good fucking like a good strategy. I think that women are generally like, that's kind of like little dick energy. That's why in the States, like a guy, like a black dude who has fucking nothing, he can still fuck like hot girls because he doesn't need to do all that shit. Like obviously a lot of them are like socially quite good and fun to be around. That's more important than some autistic robot who has like 5 Pateks. No one notices that guy. Like that's just things. You know, they're just like, it's like you've got a cake and then you put like some frosting on the top, but you have to have the cake. Otherwise it's just all sugar on the top, like just frosting. It's all just bullshit.
Say you're dating this girl, right? Because you said multiple things. If she does this, I won't take her seriously. When you go ahead and find, say, a girl and you're attracted to her, she's attracted to you, and you want to go ahead and move this relationship forward to go ahead and, I don't know, take something more seriously. And she does a behavior that, I don't know, like maybe she has like too many guy friends. I mean, she goes out to the clubs, parties without you. How do you then have that conversation with that person?
Depends on the girl. Like if it's just some girl that I don't really take very serious, like if it's some girl like we've had sex and I don't really care like really what she does, you know, I probably wouldn't maybe even have sex with her again these days. Like I don't like encourage that sort of behavior. I don't like something that everyone can have. You know, I don't like that sort of concept. You know, you're fucking a girl one week and then she's happily like with another dude the next. I don't like that. I only like dealing with girls that are pretty much like obsessed with me because then I know like where they stand. I don't like this like Western concept where everyone's so like gun shy. Like everyone holds their cards close to their chest and pretends they don't care and like, oh, he who cares less wins. I think that's like the most fucking damaging thing that's ever come out. It's like women play game on guys and guys do the same thing. But all that happens is neither gets what they want. It's so dumb. Like it's very dumb to me. Like the concept like women will just like pretend that they don't really care about the guy and then he'll pretend that he doesn't really care about the girl, and then like it all just falls over. You know, it's a lot of that toxic stuff it was taught though. It's like a very like red pill trash, like, you know, I just don't care, and like, you know, she's just going to keep circling you. That doesn't happen with hot women. You know, it doesn't even happen with me. Like there's a like tipping point, you know, people are a lot easier to replace than they think. You know, it's social media and that's expanded. So people, like women in general, they think they have more options than they do. So it's hard to compete with that. Like just because women have like a lot of guys that want to fuck them, they think that the guy wants something serious because the guy's telling them he wants something serious. So she thinks like, oh, if things fall apart, I've got all these like great guys that want to fucking like wife me up. But they don't. They just want to fuck them one time and then they'll never talk to them again. So it's a problem, like that sort of fucking thing. That's a red flag to me though, like a girl that fucking does that sort of thing, like is following a ton of dudes. Red flag for me is there's so many behaviors though. Like if I like fucked a girl like I met on Tinder and then she still had Tinder, like, you know, a week after that, I'll probably never talk to her again. You know, I don't like the concept of having sex with someone, and it's like buying like chocolate from the fucking supermarket. Like it's just the thing that you just do. It doesn't mean shit. Because that tells me that this girl's like just generally like doesn't really value her body. Like it's very like Western. You know, it's like their body's like a circus, like some like amusement park, and just have sex. There's though no connection. That tells me this girl's fucked a lot of guys, and I don't like that. Like I would never take a girl serious like if she's just running up the body count. And no guy will. Like no guy wants to be around a girl that guys have fucked. Like no guy wants to go to Sen and like there's dudes that your girl's fucked. It's like running around and you've got like a trophy, but it's like for like 10th place, and you're like holding up this 10th place trophy for the whole fucking group to see, and everyone's just like, yeah, she's in my DMs, and like she's been DMing, oh, she's liking my stories. It's so fucking embarrassing. Like it's fucking insane to me. It's one thing when guys do it. Like to me, guys are very visual. Like guys can like a photo and things like that, and I don't think it means that much. Like I can like a girl's photo, and even if she was in front of me, I still wouldn't fuck her. Like I'm not like that into her. It's just like a spontaneous thing. Like I like the photo itself, like her in that pose. But a lot of girls, like they don't look like their photos anyway. So I like the photo. It doesn't mean that I like the girl. You know, it's a lot of like filters and like face tuning and shit. But women in general, like there's nothing more embarrassing. Like I couldn't even imagine that. Like, you know, to be with a girl and she's like liking a bunch of dudes' photos or something. It's just crazy to me. It's like it's just like selling you. The hardest thing for women now, they sell their like youth and beauty. Like they sell their fucking like time. Like they only have a set amount of time to like meet like a guy that's worth something. You know, the concept that the woman's like 30 years old and she's just going to find this like fucking guy that he doesn't care about her past, and like he's a successful dude and he wants to just like marry her up. That's bullshit. Like that shit doesn't really happen unless they have to settle for a guy that doesn't really have his shit together. So it's like women in general, yeah, they sell their youth and beauty, like the time that they have to meet someone, they sell it very cheaply. You know, they'll sell it for like to sit at the table and drink bottles and all this crap. That's temporary. Like the guy doesn't want to sit, like pay girls to drink with him when she's like 30 years old. You know, so they're selling it all quite cheap. You know, a lot of girls will get like flown around and shit like that. That's, again, like selling it so cheap. Like every time I see a girl, like I'll fucking like see girls, they'll like add me or whatever, and I see she's been in Mykonos. I think that's one dick that she's had to take to get to that trip. Because Mykonos, like it's not cheap. You know, it's not a cheap place. Like she's drinking by the beach at a table. I'm like, that's one fuck. So now it's one dick in. And then I'll see a girl in a private jet, or like she's flying business class or something. And this is a girl who doesn't like obviously have a lot of money. And I'll be like, that's another dick. And then I'll see a girl like smoking shisha in Dubai, and I think, oh, that's another dick. You know, so it's such a and then she's in the Lamborghini, and I'm like, that's another dick. You know, it's all very much a fucking massive turnoff. You know, women flex. I don't know what they flex. They kind of flex like men. If they're flexing shit like that, it's pretty dumb. But they want to flex the status of the guy that they're with. But guys who have shit are like, this guy's only done that because he wants to fuck you. You know, he's not sticking around. Like he's had sex and now he's gone. So yeah, it's a woman in general to me like needs to protect her modesty, and it's difficult to say because for men and women it's different. You know, men don't really like as modest, but no guy wants to walk around with a chick that's been fucked a lot of times and not fucked by anyone she knows. And a lot of people will say that's insecure, but that's just common sense. Like no one wants to walk around, yeah, again with the 10th place trophy, or the fucking like girl who's liking a bunch of his friends, or people like stories. You know, like our group's pretty big. I get messages every day from people being like, do you know this girl? Do you know this girl? And it'll be someone who I'm like following, and then they're just fucking liking everyone else's shit. And as soon as I hear it, I generally delete the girl, but it's constant. You know, it's very fuckboy. Like, it's the fuckboy equivalent of the women. In my day, that shit would never have happened. Like, women weren't as dumb about it. Like, if they fucked around out of the city. That's the thing that women are meant to do. They're meant to go away and fuck around, and no one knows. Like, yeah, they go like 100 kilometers away and have like a night where they do shit, but doesn't come back with them. They want to protect the modesty, at least like the illusion of it. But now they're just like shitting in their own yard, and they don't understand like guys with means. They don't want that. Like, no guy wants like some community pussy. That's fucked up. That's just like the guy who just wants to have sex. Like, if you want to like, you're like looking like you're in a relationship or something like that, you don't want that. You know, it's very fucking different.
The girls that you date, are they allowed to have male friends? And if so, why or why not?
Male friends in general, I think it's like a bit of a fucking like bullshit term. You know, I think that there are no real male friends. I think men in general are just friends because they're like orbiting. They're like circling the chick until he catches her on like a weekday, and then he's going to like shoot his shot. But a lot of guys won't shoot their shot for years. So this chick will think like, oh, this guy, he's just a good friend. He's never made a move, but he's just like too nervous. Like, he doesn't know what to fucking do. And I think with men too, the longer they're with someone and they don't shoot their shot, it gets like, they get like a complex. It's like if you go on a date with a girl and you haven't kissed her and it's like nearing the end of the date, a lot of guys won't be able to do it now because the pressure's just built up too much in their head. It's like a basketball and the buzzer's about to go off and they just hold the ball instead of shooting, and then the buzzer goes off and they fucking lose the game anyway. So I think that, yeah, women in general, I don't believe in male friends. I think that's bullshit. Like, it's a bullshit term. Unless the guy's gay, but even the gay guy, like, guys can use the gay thing as a fucking like angle. Gay dudes like can still fuck women. Like, let's be honest, they still have a dick. You know, a lot of those guys can be just confused anyway, so they kind of just fuck anything that moves. So yeah, I think that women in general can't really have guy friends. I mean, if I had a girl and she had like guy friends, I would fucking probably dump her. You know, I would tell her to knock it off, or I would just dump her. I think specifically if she's beautiful. I mean, if she's like some fucking whale and she's like, oh, I got guy friends and they're like sticking around, she's like a 2 out of 10, maybe, I don't know. Maybe they're like wanting to meet her friends or something. I don't know. Guys are still fuck that though. So I don't know. Like, I think that's, yeah, mostly a myth. Like, that women can have guy friends. I think that it's just the guy who's too insecure to make a move. He's waiting for his opportunity. I think that a lot of women, if they're like, oh, can we fuck like right now? Most guys would be like, yeah, let's do it. You know, sex is, yeah, different for guys. It's like, can be a spontaneous thing. It's women in general. I find that if they fuck without a connection, they're defective. They got some sort of fucking like problem with their mind. They're probably damaged to a very large degree. I think that, yeah, they don't really respect their body. You know, the concept that you could get pregnant or like an STD or something like that, it's more serious for women. Like, guys can get STDs like chlamydia and shit like that, and it's not as fucking dangerous. Like, women get it and it can go like all the way up and like cause like fertility problems and stuff. I know it can for men, but it's much less common. The STDs are more like rampant with women. They can do a lot more damage. You know, fuck their like opportunity to have kids and shit like that. So a woman that doesn't respect her body and just takes risks and shit like that, I would think that she's like incredibly low value.
I know this guy that's really good at social circle, right? So he's like, he has a lot of friends that are girls, specifically because of kind of like what you said. You know, pretty girls can go ahead and recruit other guys to go ahead and, you know, do some specific goal. So he'll have a bunch of female friends, right? What I'm curious about is, in your mind, your opinion, why can a woman not have male friends if you're dating her? But if a woman is dating a man, why is it okay that a man could have female friends?
I don't know if I believe too much that men can have women friends either. I think that the man who's doing it in that case, it's like a strategy, you know, it's networking, it's things like that. It sounds like it's almost like a business sort of thing. He's got like a business set up. I think that that's only really possible if the guy has a massive amount of dick control. You know, if the guy's realistic with himself and he's not just like orbiting to try and like passively fucking get girls to throw themselves at him because he doesn't want to take the risk. I think if he has a considerable amount of dick control and it's just like he's providing value too, but he's got like a couple of women and they're like essentially feeding women in as well. I think that does make sense. You know, it's definitely possible. You know, you go to a table and you get like tables and girls bring like beautiful girls and things like that, but you're providing value. So I think that it's a little bit different with men. Like, the man's providing value up front. You know, these women are obviously getting things. They won't just be hanging around a guy if he's like just slinging dick. Like, that's not enough. Every guy has a dick. So I think that, yeah, if the value's provided, it makes sense. But yeah, with women and men, like what value really? Like if a woman's not working for you, like other than like looking good and things like that, like what value is she gonna like really bring to your life? It's not the same. Like she's probably not gonna have a lot of money and things like that. So if she wants to do things with you, it's a lot of that stuff. It's more fun to do with a guy. Like what are we gonna do with the like hanging out with a woman that's a friend? Like if you're not having sex, there's no like intimacy at all. You're not like fucking like getting close or anything like that. Like what would you really do? Like we go shooting, you do your training, I train, like fucking gym, things like that. Like what would I do with a woman? Like just to hang out with her, unless she was working for me or like we were like intimate, like romantic. It's doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like men and women are very different, but the woman can still like get from the man a lot more. So when they are friends with the man, it's they're like the value exchange is uneven.
Why does a woman lose her value as she sleeps with more guys, but guys don't necessarily lose value as they sleep with more girls?
I think that guys can lose value to a degree, like if they fuck a lot of women. I think guys can lose value if they fucking get a reputation as a fuckboy. Just because guys, again, can fuck women, that doesn't mean that they can retain the women. If you can only retain women that are interested in the toxicity, that's very, like, it's like trying to, like, hold on to C4. Like, eventually it's going to blow up. Like, it's too volatile. If you've only got women around you because they're, like, jealous that you've got other women around and they're competing, that's, like, temporary. Eventually if you want to, like, fucking make one, like, a main girl, that's all going to die out. So she's going to, like, lose that attraction to you. A lot of women that are interested in that are going to be damaged. It's depends what you want. Like if you just want to fuck a lot of girls, yeah, you can be toxic and all that stuff. But if you want to like get retention and like get things out of a woman over the long term, like if she wants to work with you and things like that, like if you've got a girlfriend or like a partner and she's not like working, like doing things, I don't know why you would be with her. Like they need to do a lot more than just have sex. Like what's the value otherwise? You could just fuck other girls. Like you need to, yeah, be getting considerably more value. For me, if I have a girl, like she works for me, she does things for me, she helps out, she like helps out around the house, and she obviously gets a lot of value back. But yeah, it's different. I think that women lose their value if they have sex again with a lot of guys because no guy wants to walk around with a chick with a lot of bodies. Like it's embarrassing, but it's also like, I don't know, it's embarrassing, of course, probably being the number one thing. But I think that it's hard to bond. Like if a girl's been fucked by 50 guys, like 40 dudes, she's got 40 exes. She might have Snapchat, she might have Instagram, whatever, where they DM from time to time and like they're lurking in the shadows. They still like her shit. She knows she's got like these options like lurking in the background. And a lot of relationships too, like people get rose-colored glasses on. They only think of the good times. So it's kind of easy for these sort of girls to go back to an ex because they forget why things fell apart. And then they're with the person and like, oh fuck, like this is why we broke up. But yeah, I think time can give people like a rose-colored glasses so they forget why they broke up. But yeah, in general, it's the fucking like the body count for me that's the biggest thing. It never used to be. Like if I just want short-term things with a girl and she's fucked like 10 guys, it doesn't really worry me. Like if we're just having sex and it's like, she's beautiful and things like that doesn't worry me. But if I want like something long-term, it's very concerning to me. It's just the women that I found that were the best partners were the ones that had the least amount of guys that they'd fucked. I can just tell. Like I can tell when I'm with a girl and she's fucked a lot of guys. It's just very obvious to me. It's obvious to me if I'm with a girl and she's very comfortable around men. Like she's fucking like very like Western, where the women just like run up to a new guy and just start talking to him. I don't like that. I don't like it if a woman doesn't like refer to me in public. Like if we're together and she like just starts talking to random guys and like at the table or like that around that she hasn't met, that's a fucking big red flag. Because with confidence only comes from experience. She's confident because she's got a lot of experience talking to new men. And it's not just talking like a business thing. Like obviously there's like intimacy and shit's been there. So that's a turn off. It becomes a point like, what am I getting from this girl? Like what's special? She's fucked like a heap of guys and some of them will be like massive losers. So it's like, what am I getting now that this like complete loser got? Like I'm the one now that has to like pick up the pieces essentially. This guy who's like was sleeping on the couch fucked you and like dated you or whatever. And now I'm meant to like show up on like the white horse and like provide all this fucking lifestyle for you. But like this guy didn't do jack shit. So why would I like, now I'm having to carry the torch? It's kind of like bullshit. So I think that sort of thing does matter. It's somewhat of an unspoken rule, I guess. Like, but no guy wants to be with a girl that's been pounded out. It's just the way it goes. It's not special then. Like, you're with someone, I just never would be. I would never would be, and that's not to say that I'm not with girls that have been fucked. Sometimes it can be hard to tell. Like if they're in a new city or something like that and they don't really know anyone. But yeah, in general, I have a few tests that I do to see if she's a hoe. I have a few fucking things.
What are those tests? What is like the Steven hoe test to see if they're a hoe or not?
The Stephen Ho test is the one that if they're in public and they're too comfortable around other men, if we go to the club or something like that and they're like the bouncers and things like that know her, or they've like spoken to her before, or she's comfortable to talk to the bouncers or things like that, that's a massive red flag to me. If I'm like walking in with a girl and she starts like talking to the bouncers or something while I'm there, that's a massive red flag. She like tries to take control of the situation. She's taking control of the situation because she has a lot of experience. Experience is the big turnoff. A lot of guys think like if they're with a woman and she's fucked like 20 guys that she's going to be better than the girl who's fucked just one guy. That's not true. You know, a girl could have had sex, you know, a lot of times with only one guy and still be like really good in bed. And a girl could have been fucked by a bunch of guys and still not really know what she's doing. I don't think that stuff really matters. I think it just depends on the girl. So yeah, the hoe test is that, like that. And then the Instagram one where I see if she's following a bunch of guys. Another is if we like matched on like a dating app or something like that and she didn't delete the app, like after we've met. You know, maybe we've met like once or twice and like had sex and then she's still on the app. That's a fucking like deal breaker for me. It's just, it's got to be special. You know, for me, I know that to be with me, like it's fucking cocky, but like there's a lot of fucking value like coming out. You know, like you go into nice places, you're doing nice things. You know, I'm very like fucking respectful when I'm with a girl. You know, I make her life better. I actually look to make her life better in the future. I try to like, you know, teach her things that are actually going to like change her life instead of just like extracting. I try to like build the person up. You know, it's like a tower and you get the tower here. I try to make it bigger because the bigger she gets, the guys don't really understand that. The bigger she gets, the more confident she gets, but to a point more relying on you for that sort of fucking like feeling. You know, it's a good feeling, you know, when you level up, right? Like it's just, it feels good. I think that in general, like there's two ways that you can have a woman. Like guys think that they need to like degrade her and like keep her down really low. And that's the only way that they can have a woman. You know, if she's scared of losing you because like you make her feel bad, like, you know, you generally treat her like complete shit. I don't believe that. I think that if you want to have a partner, they have to be a reflection of you and you want them like extremely like built up. You know, you want them to look good and then it in so fact makes you both look good. I think that, yeah, to like degrade them or like bully them or like make them like tell them they're ugly or something like that. I don't believe that shit. I don't believe like girls, like guys think that they take a girl out and they have to like pretty much cover her up, like things like that. I don't believe that sort of stuff. I think that a woman can look beautiful and they should. Women like, if they're beautiful, they like to like go out and like be shown off essentially and things like that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think that they're either going to get the attention from that when they're with you or they're going to chase that sort of attention and validation when they're not with you. I think that in general, people want to be like, you know, known that they're attractive and beautiful women, like they do know they're attractive. So when you start degrading them, it's difficult. Like you can't really keep that front up.
When you spend more time with a woman, naturally what happens with any relationship, not just a woman, with anyone, is you're going to have some disagreements and arguments. Some could be heated, some could not be. How do you circumnavigate your arguments and your disagreements with like the woman that you date?
Depends on the disagreement. If we're having like a small disagreement, I'll just generally say like what I think, and then I'll be very fucking negotiable. You know, I have things where it's obvious that she's trying, like, you know, she's doing things and she's like 80% of the way there, but like maybe there's 20% or something where she's not quite getting it right. I'm very like fucking respectable and like, you know, generally very tolerant. I'll still like tell her what I expect, but I'm not like a fucking dictator where I'll just like scream at her or something like that. It's been a very long time since I've screamed at a woman, you know, like actually fucking like yelled at her. That would be pretty extreme. Like I haven't really done that for many years. You know, I don't believe in like, I think that if you have to scream at your girl, like you're in a fucking dark place, you know, like it's not really, that sort of stuff's very temporary. You know, like you can force people to do things, but you can't force them to do it for long. It's like you've got like something and you just squeeze it as long as you can, but eventually it like blows out of your hand and you lose control. Like you lose control of not just that yourself. Like, you know, if you keep like firing yourself up at your girl, like you can eventually like fucking explode at her or like on her. So you've got to be, yeah, careful with it. So I think that if it's just a general like small thing, then I'll very fucking like understanding. You know, if it's obvious she's trying something like, and then it's like if she's doing the dishes or something like that and she like takes out a plate and smashes it on the ground, I don't care about shit like that. You know, I wouldn't fucking like start screaming at her or like throw the dishwasher or something. I think that's all small stuff. You know, that's just general things. Or if she makes like a mistake of doing something again in the house or something, that's quite small. You know, I don't think that that's just general accidents. But if she's doing things like, I don't know, following guys or something that I don't like, or like following guys that I don't like fucking think that it's a good thing, or like putting photos up on Instagram that I don't like. That's more serious. Like it's obviously it's going to be a more serious discussion of me just saying fucking delete it, or like delete it, but like I'm now worried about why it got to that point. Like I don't think that I try to understand things from a deeper angle. I know that when people do things, it's like generally for a reason. So I try to figure out like if the things can be salvaged if they're at that point. If they're at the point where a girl that I'm with is like setting thirst traps online, like I would be really fucking like concerned. If that's her first behavior, like if we have a disagreement and the chick just jumps on and does a bunch of shit like that, I'm really worried about like if it's worth like even fucking saving the relationship, because obviously like she knows how to get to me, but her way to get to me is to like threaten to fuck other dudes, or like set attention traps for guys where they're like messaging her like love hard eyes and like crap. She knows the thing that annoys me, but that's the first thing that she does. That's concerning because it can get very explosive. Like what is she going to do after that? Like when that eventually falls apart, like is she going to do something fucking like really dumb? So that sort of thing I'd be like hanging the relationship on by a thread at that point.
One thing that usually is like the argument after that, right? So say you're dating a girl, she's just starting, and then you tell her she's not allowed to have like male friends, right? And of course, naturally, like every woman, if you say that, they'll be like, "Oh, you're so controlling. Why are you so strict? All these rules." What would you have to say to all those girls that are saying that?
I generally just say that I am. Like I don't come out with some fucking massive spiel about, oh, I'm not, I just need to know, I need to all this crap. I just generally say I am controlling because I am. I'm a controlling person. If I love the person, it's not just that, with friends as well. I like to see them go on like one specific path that I think is the most optimal path for them. I don't like to fucking like, if someone's doing things wrong and they're like a friend and like you walk out and they're like, doing drugs or something like that, I would say like to fucking knock it off, because they have so much potential. It's like if I'm with a girl, I recognize that she has a lot of potential. If she follows this specific path, if she's with me, like she's getting a lot out of it. It's not like I'm just extracting, I'm not just taking shit from her. I'm not like using her or something like that. Like she's still getting like a good life. So I think that, yeah, in general, it's just the way it is with me. Like I know that I'm a controlling person. I think that control is a very fucking like damaged word. I think a guy always has to be a little bit partly controlling. If you love something, why would you not be a bit controlling over it? It's not to say like, oh, you've got to do this or you've got to do that every fucking second, or like, oh, I'm going to beat you up or something like that. That doesn't mean controlling's different. It can be controlling and not violent. Controlling for me is like do this or fuck off. It's not like do this or I'm going to like throw you out the window. It's just like you have the option to leave. But this is what I expect. I lay out all my fucking like ground rules of what I expect. And you can lay your rules out with me as well. It's not a one-way street. Guys get confused with it. They think that like they have all these expectations, but the chick can't expect a single thing from them. And then they wonder why like the chick doesn't do what they say. They have to have a framework that they won't break. Like you can't tell a chick to do all this shit and then yourself just do nothing. Like just do everything the opposite. It's like teaching you like your son or your daughter. You can't tell them to fucking like, live a healthy life if you're just sitting on the couch like 300 pounds. You have to still be a role model. If you like, oh, I'm telling my girl that I can't fuck, you're like, she can't fuck anyone. You can't be like just in every chick's DMs. Like you can't have it thrown in her face every minute that you're doing the exact opposite. It's kind of like only a very small amount of girls will accept that. Like guys think that every girl's just going to accept them fucking like 20 girls. It's not the case. Especially if they're sloppy. Like if there's only a select girl that'll put up with it. And I don't think she'll put up with it forever. It's going to, like you're building equity with this chick and then you're going to keep blowing it up again and again. So I think that, yeah, expectations go both ways. Like I know that this chick, like fucking, if I tell her, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. And then she turns to me and says like, if you lost your job or whatever, I know that she'd like theoretically be like the relationship's in trouble. If I'm not fucking like doing what I need to do, I'm not carrying my end of the bargain. Like I wouldn't expect that she's just going to sit there and be like, yeah, that's fine. Like I'm just going to fucking support you forever. I think that's bullshit. So I think expectations go both ways. If I ballooned out to like 200 kilos, I don't think that she's going to sit there and be like, yeah, I love this guy. Like my big fucking marshmallow. I don't believe that. I think that's bullshit. So expectations, they go both ways. If I changed completely and was like some soy boy, I don't think that she would be sitting there like fucking, perfectly doing what I say and things like that. So expectations can be unspoken. It's the same with women, like if I'm with a woman and she just like gains heaps of weight, I just tell her, I have like a thin fucking framework that you have to like exist in. I think that if you've got a girl, like she needs to like respect you enough to like want to look good. I think that some guys just think they don't deserve that. Like they can't have any say. You know, like I'm with a girl, but I can't have a single say on what she does. She's a free spirit. If she's a free spirit, like she may as well be single. It's the same as me. You know, you have to have a say on each other. Like just because you have a girl, like she can have a say on like an input in your life as well. You know, women have a different perspective, I find. Like they have an intuition, but they also have like provide a different perspective that you haven't seen. You know, women in general can see guys exactly how they are, but they often don't tell you unless they're like fighting with you how you are. So you can't really understand like their exact perspective unless they're pissed off at you, and then they like let loose, and then you're like they're fucking wrong, and then like the next day or something you think about it and you're like actually they're exactly right. It's different with women. They have a different perspective, so their input can be good. You know, it can be valuable to your business as well. I'm not saying that they're like all fucking business savvy and business women and like all logical and things like that, but sometimes they have good ideas. Their idea can be from a female perspective. So if you're in sales or something, they can teach you how to sell like to a feminine like psychology, like how their mind works. So yeah, I do think that women have a lot of stuff to provide, like more than their body. Like I know a lot of guys, sex is like the only thing that they think about. The idea of like having sex is pretty much like 99% of a relationship. But that's weird to me because like you may as well just be single. Like so then you can just fuck like multiple girls. But if you want to have like a relationship, to think that sex, it's not the biggest thing. Sex is just a part. You know, it's like a piece of the puzzle, but there's still like many parts to the relationship. But yeah, I think that in general, like if you want to have a relationship, I don't think it's a bad thing. I know guys are fucking like shit scared of that. They're like live in a massive scarcity. They think that, oh, if I like tell a chick that I love her, like she could break my heart. And that's like everything that's good is a risk. Like if you start a business, it can fall over. You know, you start a business on a loan, you can lose fucking everything that you had attached to it, like all your collateral as well. Like you might put your house up or something. Everything that's like worth building, like you have a kid or something, like they could fucking die, like or something could happen. They could be born like with some sort of problem. Like everything that's important is always going to come with an element of risk, and you have to like look after them then. And they're born with like, you know, a hole in the heart or something, which I have a friend whose kid has that, and it's a lifelong thing. You know, it's like a lifelong responsibility that they have now. So everything that's everything that's worth having comes with an element of risk. Guys always want like the sure thing. Like, oh, I only want like the chick she's definitely going to be with me to the day I die. That's like saying I want a business and I just want to know that it's never going to fail. Like most businesses fail. It just depends what you want. But then the outcome of the guy who takes no risk is a failure anyway. Like, you know, it's things that are worth having. It's always going to come with that element of risk and like danger, and you can get your heart stomped on. You know, I've had that before. It's the way it goes. You know, it's the game. Like with women, I haven't been broken up with, but I've been in situations where like the breakup that we've had has been like fucking crushing, you know, so it's generally fucking difficult. You know, the things like that are worth having. That always comes with the element of risk. That's my take.
Yo, man, thank you so much for hopping on today.
All right, brother. It's good to see you again, huh?